Good morning, guys and gals. So I have been getting a question very frequently, and I thought it's time to answer it, and it has everything to do with fertilizer. Henry's awake. People want to know, Mike, how do you fertilize all these wonderful plants that you've got out here? How do you fertilize your outdoor potted plants? Well, whether it comes to my potted plants outdoors, my in-ground plants outdoors, or my vegetable garden, or my house plants, I basically use 3 different types of fertilizer. And we're going to cover all that right now, as well as all of the who, well, not the who, but the what, when, where, why, and how much. So first of all, I've got multiple videos covering each of these different things that I use for fertilizer for all of my different plants around this property. And I'm going to put links to all those videos down in the description. So if you guys want to dive deeper, check out those links. So there are basically 3 different types of fertilizing that I do around here, and they coincide with 3 different, not necessarily types of plants, but situations of plants. Now those 3 different situations are 1, indoor house plants, 2, outdoor landscape plants and these potted plants that I have here, and 3, my edible plants like my vegetable garden and what I have out in my orchard. So let's cover house plants first. Isn't that a beautiful rose? That's Richard's rose. About a year ago, I made a specific video that showed you guys a conglomeration of fertilizers that I was using, kind of my own mixture of fertilizers that I was using for my indoor houseplants. I arrived at that fertilizer by playing around with these different liquid fertilizers, mixing them together and trying different things on different plants in my house. Now this fertilizer includes Miracle-Gro, mother plant, and Epsom salts, and it worked out fantastic. Like I said, I'll have links down to videos about that fertilizer and the results that we got on different experiments with it. But I only use that fertilizer for indoor house plants. Why? Well, the reason is, 1, it's really expensive if you're going to try and use and mix up that type of fertilizer and bring it outdoors to all of your landscape plants. And 2, it's time consuming mixing up all of those fertilizers. So through the winter, when I've got more time, I'm indoors and I've got all my houseplants that need fertilizer and I can adjust the dosages, I mix up that indoor plant fertilizer and it works out fantastic. Another reason I use that plant fertilizer indoors is because I can adjust the dosages. If I see a plant looking a little too green or maybe getting some nitrogen toxicity, I can back off. If I see a plant needing a little bit more of the potassium phosphorus, I can add a little bit more. So I can play around with dosages, I can play around with how frequently I fertilize and how much fertilizer I put in the water, and all those different variables. Now those are important variables and people want to know all those details, and so here's a basic rule of thumb. I mix up a batch of my fertilizer like I show you in the video, and then I water the plants. Then I watch the plants, and they're all different. When it comes to petunias, like the one we've got behind me here, these things are nitrogen hogs and they suck up tons of fertilizer. And those leaves will just turn green and deeper green, and they'll just continue to grow and bloom like crazy. Sometimes I fertilize those things every other day when they're indoors under those grow lights that I've got under that little table. If I see them turning too green, or I see them just kind of looking like they're just over fertilized, I'll back off and just start watering with regular tap water for a few different cycles of watering. Now, a plant like croton, they need very little fertilizer. They're slower growing, and so I can get away with fertilizing them once a month, or maybe even longer, maybe even every 2 months. You really have to gauge it based on how the plant looks, and that's what I do with my indoor house plants. I just water them with the fertilizer, and then when I see that they've got too much fertilizer or they're just on the edge there, then I start backing off and watering with regular tap water. The only real problem that has arisen with that indoor liquid plant fertilizer is that not everybody has access to one specific ingredient, and that is the mother plant. Unfortunately, I cannot control that aspect of it. It's sold where it's sold. If you're outside of the US, it seems like people just can't get it. I'm working on something different than that, something even more natural, something that people have access to all over the world. In short, a real good solution for nitrogen is ammonia. I'm going to work on some videos on that in the future, but for now, if you can't get mother plant, Miracle-Gro, and then adding the Epsom salt to it will get you most of the way there. Now let's talk about the second type of fertilizing that I do, and that is my outdoor plants, my landscape plants and my potted plants here that are not edible plants, landscaping plants. Once we go from the indoors to the outdoors, I drop the liquid fertilizer because, like I said before, it's expensive, it takes a long time to mix all that up, and I couldn't possibly water all of my landscape plants and all of these potted plants with that liquid fertilizer. It just would be too time consuming and too expensive to make that happen. So what do? I use a slow release pelletized fertilizer. Now this fertilizer here is specifically formulated for outdoor landscape plants, and it's even more specifically formulated for cool weather plants like my rhododendrons. It's higher in nitrogen, and so it works really well for evergreen plants. It's also a slow release fertilizer, and that makes it really easy to take care of these plants because I can put a scoop on each plant one time throughout the season, the growing season, and it will fertilize them over a period of time. All I've got to worry about from there is watering. Now the specific brand of what I use is not the important thing. The important thing is that it's slow release and the formulation fits your plants. You can use Osmocote, I use Apex, it really doesn't matter. The brand I use is a commercial brand and you can't get it at stores. You have to get it commercially in 50-pound bags, and that's how I get it. When I first started propagating plants, I used Osmocote. I just go to any big box store, buy a bag of Osmocote, and then you can use that on your plants. But you'll get to a certain point if you continue growing where you really need large bags of this stuff. I'll generally go through 1 or 2 of those bags in a season. So it's really easy to quickly see how using a slow release granular or pelletized fertilizer is really the way to go for your outdoor landscape plants. You use it once, it slowly releases all season, and all you have to do is water to get all the nutrients you need to the soil. There are lots of different types. A lot of them come with different mineral formularies or formulations, and also the different NPK numbers on them, just depending on what type of plants you're fertilizing. Mine is formulated for cool weather, evergreen plants typically. It's got a higher nitrogen content, but I use it for everything around here to get it started, and I have really great results with it. Now for fruiting plants, if you're using any kind of a commercial fertilizer, you're going to want to use something that's got a little bit higher of the potassium and phosphorus in it so that you can get that plant to develop those fruits. And typically those types of plants aren't evergreen and don't need as high of nitrogen. All right, so that's number 1 and 2. Let's talk about the third type of fertilizer I use and the situation I use it for. So we've done videos of my orchard out here and also my vegetable garden, and this is the third area of fertilization that I use, and I typically don't like to use chemical fertilizers on my edible plants. So whatever do you do, Mike? Well, the short answer is nothing. The long answer gets a little bit weirder. Let's cover the nothing statement first. This is a subject that I am passionate about when it comes to plants growing out in nature. And it has everything to do with the soil microbiome. And there's a great book about it. If you guys are interested in this, you should go check out. I'll put a link down in the description below. I've done a video on this in the past. There we go. And the book is called Teeming with Microbes. Fantastic book, and it'll help you understand the soil food web better so that you can just create a beautiful soil in a very easy and manageable way without having to do a ton of manual labor, because the microbes do all of the building. So for example, I planted all of these blueberries probably 4, maybe 5 years ago now. We've talked about this row. This is a different row over here, and it's not doing really well, but that's a whole nother story. But this row right here is doing fantastic and just pumping out massive amounts of blueberries. Our raspberries, pumping out massive amounts of raspberries. The apples and pears are just making tons of fruit. And I have never fertilized any of this. Well, what did you do to get these things to grow so well and fruit so well for you? And the answer to that has everything to do with I was teeming with microbes. This entire orchard was created with a ton of organic material. Now, there was a lot of work up front for me, but you don't have to do the same. I got a little bit overzealous, and I've had a source for manure and wood chips. I covered this entire orchard using my dump truck and my tractor with 6 inches of composted cow manure from a local dairy, and then another 6 inches of wood chips. Over the years, as that's broken down, that has provided and will continue to provide decades of fertilizer for these plants. In fact, I probably will never have to fertilize anything in this orchard in my lifetime. These zucchini behind me are planted in that orchard. We've tilled this little area up. The wood chips and manure have fully broken down over the years, and we just rough this little spot up and plant these types of plants in here, and we never fertilize those either. We just let them grow, and there is so much nutrition in that soil that they just do everything they need to do. Now, we're going to talk about something else, and some of you have been following me for a while know exactly where I'm going with this. The next little aspect to all this has to do with human and animal waste. Now, don't get all nervous and worried. I'm not telling you to go pee on your vegetables. I do occasionally, and many people do, but you don't have to. You just got to get comfortable with whatever you've got to get comfortable with. But I'm telling you right now, I've got videos about this that I made in the past where I did experiments with zucchini plants, with one zucchini plant, actually maybe it was 3, that had no human fertilizer, and I'm only talking about urine here. And then a zucchini plant that did get the urine, and the results will shock you. If you haven't seen those videos, like I said, I'll have links down below, but it's pretty cool stuff. And it's coupled with another fertilizer, and that has to do with wood ash. So the urine contains all of the nitrogen that the plant needs to grow green material and thrive in that way. And then the wood ash contains all of the potassium and phosphorus and all of the minerals that the plants need to thrive and produce tons of vegetables and fruits. Now, I couldn't possibly produce enough urine to treat all of these plants throughout this whole orchard and our vegetable garden behind me. So in this area, like I said, wood chips and cow manure is what naturally is breaking it down. But if I have a little area like this over here where I've got just my little zucchini garden, or I have just little sprinklings of different things going on, and I see something that needs help, you better believe I use urine on those plants, and I'm telling you right now, it's like a magic elixir. It will bring those plants right back up, and it will make them start growing awesome. And that is as natural as it gets, guys. Urine actually contains urea and ammonia, exactly the nitrogen that the plants love and thrive on. Urine has been used for thousands of years to grow plants to their fullest potential. It's just a form of nitrogen. And when you couple that with the wood ash, you're covering all your bases, and it's 100% natural, and you can feel confident eating those fruits or vegetables that there are no chemicals in them. I know it sounds gross to the uninitiated, but go check out those videos below. I talk all about it, and I cover all of it, and I show you the experiment, and I'm telling you right now, it's fantastic stuff. And as long as we're talking about natural fertilizers, I might as well cover the chickens. These chickens are let into that garden area every fall after the harvest is done, and they go in there and till and eat that garden down. And then they fertilize the garden for me. I don't have to worry about it, and it gets all of the nutrients it needs to grow these awesome vegetables. I mean, look at these cabbages. It's still early on, but they are already forming into beautiful balls of cabbage, and they are tight and dense and healthy and green, and there was no synthetic fertilizer put on these, just chicken manure. We've already been harvesting our broccoli, as you can see. Grew huge and healthy. My wife picked it all, she blanched it, put it in the freezer, and we've got broccoli to eat all winter long. Soon we'll be harvesting these pickling cucumbers, and we'll be canning pickles, and all of this was done naturally with chicken manure and grass clippings. And look at these green beans here. No synthetic fertilizers. They're already coming along there, guys, and they are growing like crazy. We're going to get bushels of green beans that we can can off of these plants. And like I said, nothing synthetic, only organic, and it wasn't difficult. The chickens do all the work. So that's it. That wraps up all of the information that I could possibly throw at you in a short amount of time about fertilizer, what I use, how I use it, when I use it, and the rest is up to you. So I hope you guys learned something from this. That is the most important thing. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you want to follow along and see more fantastic gardening videos. Have a fantastic week, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios!